Hello, dear students. Today we are going to start the chapter number 6, the Browning version, written by Terence Rattigan. This chapter, the Browning version, is an extract from a long play of the same name. That means from the Browning version, which is written by Terence Rattigan. So, this extract is about a repressed and unpopular schoolmaster whose name is Mr. Andrew Crocker Harris. This deals with the idea that those who stick to principles often come to grief. It is about the last few days of an old classic teacher whose name is Andrew Crocker Harris at British Public School. This extract brings about the agony of a dedicated teacher who is unpopular with his students for his strict attitude, and he is forced to take an early retirement. There are three characters in the play in this extract. One is Mr. Crocker Harris, that is Mr. Andrew Crocker Harris, who is the teacher, who is a middle aged man and teacher in this school, the British school, who teaches old classic, that is Latin and Greek literature. He has been very strict about rules and he always wants his students to work hard at their lessons. He never violates any rules or regulation, and thus we can say that he is a strict disciplinarian. On the other side, there is another teacher, Frank Hunter. He is a young science teacher and is very popular with his students. He is very easy to approach and seems to be quite of amiable nature. Thus, students they like Mr. Frank. And then there is Taplow. He is a student, a 16-year-old boy who is a student of lower fifth grade. He is obedient and hardworking, and somewhere he has mixed feelings about his teacher, Mr. Andrew Crocker Harris. When we talk about the title, the Browning version, we have to understand the fact that this title it has been rightly taken from the translated version of a Greek tragedy, Agamemnon. This Greek tragedy was translated in English by Robert Browning, and Robert Browning gave the title to this translated version of Greek tragedy to be the Browning version. Thus, it is appropriate in the sense that it is thematically relevant. How? If we see the Greek hero of the tragedy Agamemnon, he is ready to face a life of poverty and starvation rather than succumbing to the unprincipled ways of gaining popularity. Later on, he is also murdered by his wife. On the other side, when we see the protagonist of the Browning version written by Terence Rattigan, we see that how this Andrew Crocker R. Harris is found to be a spiritually dead person. This man is repressed and is unpopular schoolmaster, and he is found to be or we can say proved to be a failure on his professional front. Somewhere he was also failing in his personal life. So we see that how the two protagonists they relate to each other thematically. So thus when we talk about the title we can say that the title is aptly chosen. Coming back to the chapter, the scene of the play, this extract, the Browning version, is set in a school. Taplow, a boy of 16, has come in to do extra work for Crocker Harris, who is a middle aged teacher who teaches Latin. Frank, a science teacher, finds Taplow waiting for his teacher, Crocker Harris, and they start conversation. Thus, the conversation between Frank and Taplow exposes a very unhealthy trend among some teachers to encourage students to comment on their fellow teachers. So, let us start reading the chapter and understand the characters. So, dear students, when we read the chapter, we also see that we don't find Mr. Crocker Harris on the scene. And it is through the conversation between Mr. Frank Hunter and Taplow that we will come to know about Mr. Crocker Harris. And we will also be able to compare these two teachers on the basis of their age, their temperament, and their devotion. So let us start reading the chapter. This is an excerpt from the Browning version. The scene is set in a school. Frank is young and Crocker Harris middle aged. Both are masters. Taplow is a boy of 16 who has come in to do extra work for Crocker Harris. But the latter has not yet arrived. Latter here refers to Mr. Crocker Harris. He has not arrived yet, and Frank finds Taplow waiting. Frank, do I know you? Taplow, no, sir. Frank, what's your name? Taplow, Taplow says. Frank, Taplow? No, I don't. You are not a scientist, I gather. Taplow, no, sir, I'm still in the lower fifth. I can't specialize until next term. That is to say, if I have got my remove, all right. So, students, we see that how when Taplow was waiting for his teacher, Mr. Frank, he notices this boy standing in front of the classroom and he goes over to him and starts conversation. So here he asks him first that if he knew him. And the boy, he introduces himself and tells his name that he was Taplow. And then the teacher, he refuses to identify him and saying that he was not a scientist. Scientist here refers to that means he was not a science student. That means he was not his student. And thus Taplow further clarifies that no, he was still in the lower fifth grade. And he says that he could not specialize until next term. That means until he got his removed, he would not be able to go to the next class. So Taplow answers him and tells him that he studies in the lower fifth standard and he cannot specialize until he gets his remove. Remove refers to the certificate of promotion. So Frank further questions him. Do you know if you have? Don't you know if you have got your remove? Taplow says, "No, sir. Mr. Crocker Harris doesn't tell us the results like other masters." So Frank asked him whether he got the remove or not, and Taplow replied that his master, who is his master here, Mr. Crocker Harris, he does not reveal the information like other masters. Frank, why not? Taplow says, well, you know what he's like, sir. Frank, I believe there's a rule that form results should only be announced by the headmaster on the last day of the term. So, when Frank asked that why he still did not know about his result, he said that you all know about Mr. Crocker Harris, that how disciplined he was. He always followed rules and regulations. So, he has not got the remove yet. And Frank, he admitted the fact that yes, there is a rule in the school. The form here refers to the class result. So he says that yes, the class results are always announced by the headmaster at the end of the term. So Taplow, he was still waiting for his result. Now other masters, they had already declared the result, including Mr. Frank also. And Mr. Crocker Harris, he had still not displayed the result or declared the result in his own class. And Taplow says, yes, but who else pays attention to it except Mr. Crocker Harris? So when Mr. Frank, he told about the rule of the result, which is always announced by the headmaster, then here Taplow admits the fact that yes, but who pays attention to such rules except Mr. Crocker Harris? That means he admits the fact that yes, Mr. Crocker Harris, he always follows rules and regulation, but other teachers, they don't follow it, and that's why they have already announced the result in their class. The conversation goes on. Frank says, I don't, I admit, but that's no criterion. That means Frank, he admits in front of Taplow that he has already declared the result in his class, and he says that but this is not a criteria of announcing the result. So you have got to wait until tomorrow to know your fate, have you? And thus he questions him that uh, he still had to wait for another day. And Taplow admits, saying, yes, sir. Frank, supposing the answer is favorable, what then? Taplow says, oh, science, sir, of course. Frank little sadly, yes, we all get slackers. Slackers means lazy students who are not interested in science subjects. And thus, when Frank questioned Tableau about his interest in the subject, that after passing, after getting his remove, what he wanted to opt for. So Taplow said that he wanted to go for science subject, and Frank is little disappointed, and he again discloses the fact that how he always gets lazy students who are not even interested in science subject. Taplow, little protestingly, he says that I'm extremely interested in science, sir. So he shows his interest towards the science subject as if trying to impress Mr. Frank here. Frank, are you? I'm not. Not at least in the science I have to teach. Now, through this conversation, we are gradually getting to know Mr. Frank and Mr. Crocker Harris. We can start doing a comparative analysis that how Mr. Frank is not a devoted teacher. He never follows rules and regulation as he has already disclosed the result in his own class, but Mr. Crocker Harris, he has still not disclosed it. And then we see that how Mr. Frank is also not a devoted teacher. He does not like the subject he teaches, and he admits this fact in front of a student. So he says that I am not, at least in the science I have to teach. And Taplow says, well, anyway, sir, it's a good deal more exciting than this muck, indicating his book. He was holding a book in his hand and pointing towards that book. He called it a muck. Muck means a useless subject which is of no use to him at that moment. So Frank says, what is this muck? Taplow, Aeschylus, sir, the Agamemnon. So Frank questions about what he is talking, to which thing he is referring as muck. And Taplow said that he was talking about the literature, the Greek literature, the Agamemnon written by Aeschylus. Frank, and your considered view is that Agamemnon is muck? He wanted to assure and thus questions back to Taplow. Taplow says, well, no, sir, I don't think the play is muck exactly. I suppose, in a way, it is rather a good plot, really. A wife murdering her husband and all that. I only meant the way it is taught to us. Just a lot of Greek words strung together, woven together, and 50 lines if you get them wrong. So Taplow admits the facts and he tries to defend his teacher, not defending his teacher, but he says that it is not that the play is not an interesting one. Yes, the plot is quite interesting, the story is quite interesting, but the way it is taught to them is the thing that makes the whole novel a boring one. And he also says that if they commit any mistake, they're asked to write 50 lines, making those mistakes in a correct manner, rectifying their errors. Then Frank said, you sound a little bitter, Taplow. Seeing the upset mood of Taplow, he says that, why are you so upset? He asks about his mood, that he was a little displeased. Taplow says, I am, sir. Frank, Captain, Taplow, no, sir, extra work. Extra work on the last day of school. So Frank is a little surprised to see the boy doing extra work at the end of the term. So he questions Taplow that why he was sounding so displeased, why he was so upset. And then he questions that whether you were asked to stay back, you were detained after the class there. And Taplow says that no, it was just for the sake of doing an extra work there. And Frank is a little surprised, saying, extra work on the last day of school. Why is that so? Taplow says, yes, sir, I might be playing golf. You would think he had have enough to do anyway himself, considering he is leaving tomorrow for good. But oh no, I missed a day last week when I was ill, so here I am, and look at the weather, sir. So here the student Taplow, he tries to defend his teacher by saying that yes, sir, I wanted to play golf, but it is not so that as Mr. Crocker Harris, he was going to leave the next day. So, as we have already discussed, that Mr. Crocker Harris, he had to take early retirement due to certain reasons, and the reasons were that how he was unpopular among students, he was not liked by his colleagues and the headmaster too. So he had to take early retirement. But here Taplow is found defending his teacher, saying that you might be thinking that he had enough work to do as he was leaving the next day, and the boy has come for the extra work. He says that it was not so. He had missed a day the last week and because of his illness, and for that he has to compensate by doing extra work. So his teacher wanted that he should complete his lectures, and that's why he was asked to come on the last day of the term. And that's why he says that he was waiting there for his teacher. He was upset because he wanted to play golf that day, and the weather was now becoming worse, and that's why he looked little upset. So it was not that his teacher had wanted him to do extra work, but it was that he wanted to play golf and he was upset, and he had to come to complete the lectures because he had himself missed lectures because of his illness. Frank then says that bad luck, still there's one comfort. So he says that okay, it is bad luck that he can't go for playing golf there, but still he says that there's one comfort. He still have one benefit. What is that? You are pretty well certain to get your removed tomorrow for being a good boy in taking extra work. So now we also come to know that there were some teachers in the schools who used to give extra grades to the students who did some extra work there. So Mr. Frank is sure that now Taplow would definitely get his removed because he was there in the school for doing extra work, and that's why he said that still you have one comfort here, that you will definitely get the remove the next day. But Taplow says, well, I'm not so sure, sir. That would be true of the ordinary masters, all right. They just would not dare not to give a chap a remove after his taking extra work. But those sort of rules don't apply to the Croc, Mr. Crocker Harris. I asked him yesterday outright. Outright means straight away, that if he would give me a remove, and do you know what he said, sir? Now, Taplow is little disappointed again on listening to this fact, because he said that this would be all right when we talk of some ordinary masters, that they considered the extra efforts of the student and they gave the students extra grades. But this is not with Crocker Harris. And he says that those rules don't apply to the Mr. Crocker Harris. See how his disrespect towards teacher is shown here, because he was about to call Mr. Crocker Harris as Croc, and then he rectified himself and called him Mr. Crocker Harris. So he says that I questioned him in a straight manner if he would give him his remove, but he was quite surprised what he said. So Frank said that yes, what was that? What was the reply? Taplow says, imitating his teacher in a throaty manner, in a rough manner, the way his teacher spoke, and he said, my dear Taplow, I have given you exactly what you deserve, no less and certainly no more. Do you know, sir, I think he may have marked me down rather than up for taking extra work. I mean, the man's hardly human. He breaks off quickly. Sorry, sir, have I gone too far? So his dislike is again shown towards his teacher when he imitates his teacher. And the reply that his teacher had given at that time, he tries to imitate it, saying, my dear Taplow, I have given you exactly what you deserve, no less, certainly, no more. So when he questioned his teacher, the reply that he got was that he would be given what he deserved. And thus we see that Mr. Crocker Harris, he never considered the extra efforts of the student. He wanted that students should be given what they deserve, no less and no more. So he also says that, and because of that, Taplow finds his teacher to be hardly human, that he did not have a heart in his body. He was not a person who would be influenced by these kind of things, and thus he says that he was hardly human. कि उनके पास दिल ही नहीं है. So this way, he criticizes his teacher. But then he realized his mistake. He felt that he should not have used such kind of words for his teacher, and he apologizes for that, and he says, have I gone too far? So कि क्या मैंने कुछ ज़्यादा ही बोल दिया? And this way he apologized. Mr. Frank, he says that yes, much too far. And Taplow admits again with an apology that I got carried away, that he became a little emotional, he was swayed away, he was swept away by the emotions, and thus he just made those remarks, but then he apologized to Mr. Frank that he should not have said such words for his teacher. So, dear students, we will stop here today. We will continue the chapter in the next session. So, keep reading. Have a nice day, all of you. Thank you.